how to impress the driving test examiner on your driving test in 2023. Welcome to the latest video where you are going to learn to walk, learn to talk, and learn to think like a driving test examiner. Because as they say, in order to beat your enemy, one needs to be able to think like your enemy. Now, I'm not suggesting the driving test examiner is our enemy, because they are not. In fact, they are very much our friend, because they are the one that are giving us our driving license. And they do give a lot of driving licenses out every single day. But regardless of that, learning to think like a driving test examiner is still going to massively help us pass our driving test first time. Now, the good news is not a huge amount has changed on the UK driving test since last year, apart from the latest and greatest tips that I'm going to share with you right now. So during this video, we are going to look at three things. The first thing we're going to look at is the negativity around the driving test examiner and how this actually affects our nerves, our confidence, and can inevitably lead to a failed driving test. The second thing we're going to look at is some top tips for the driving test straight from the horse's mouth. The horse's mouth being a driving test examiner. And the third and final part of the video is going to be all about how we can impress the driving test examiner, giving ourselves the best possible chances of passing the driving test first time. Driving examiners get loads of grief from students, okay? You've only got to put a quick search online about driving test examiner and see what comes up. See how much positivity comes up there and see how much negativity comes up there. The question is, why is this? Now, this is probably because over half of all driving tests are failed. And driving tests means so much to us that it carries a lot of emotional weight, which means when we fail, it's very easy to attach that emotion to the driving test examiner. Now, in all honesty, in most of these cases, the student probably recognizes that actually they did something wrong and they didn't deserve to pass on that occasion.
What are you talking about?
Okay, what we're going to aim to do here is turn this upside down and inside out and have a look at the driving test from another perspective. Now, when that driving test examiner comes out, they are expecting you to be able to drive. Okay, they know you can drive, because after all, why would you be there for the driving test? So they're essentially giving you full marks. You've got 100 out of 100. They've even got your driving certificate ready. It's there with them. All you need to do is keep those full marks. Show them that, yes, you are correct, Mr. Examiner, I can drive. Don't give them any reason to start taking marks away. So I guess what I'm trying to say with this is the glass isn't half empty. In fact, the glass isn't half full. The glass is actually full to the brim. So just keep it that way. You know, driving examiners are normal people, just like you, me. They go home, they walk the dog, they have tea, they have a shower, they do all the things that normal people do, and they go to bed to come back to work the next day. So try and treat them that way. Try not put them on a pedestal. And I know that's far easier said than done, because when we want something that much and someone has the power to not give it to us, that can really change things. But we've got to try and keep our mindset in the right direction. And that leads us on to you getting the best possible chance of passing that driving test first time. Lucky for you guys, I have spent hours creating an online driving course, all for less than the cost of one driving lesson. If you'd like to have a look, it is in the description below. Back to the video. And the next part of the video is 3 tips from a driving examiner who's been in the job for over 15 years. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, these are not exciting tips, but they are extremely true and extremely useful. And the first one, which I have personally experienced, which I'll tell you about after, and that is don't get distracted by the examiner pressing buttons on the tablet. They have to press buttons for absolutely everything on the driving test, including asking someone to pull over, asking someone to complete a maneuver, just about everything they have to press a button for. So it is not worth you looking over, and looking over is probably very similar to you looking at a mobile phone, which is against the law, and the reason being it distracts your eyes off the road and you're far more likely to make a mistake. If you haven't already, please don't forget to give the video a quick like. It helps massively. Help me, help you, help them, help us. So a really quick example of what I'm talking about here. I had a fantastic student called Chris, still texts me to this day, great lad. He failed his first driving test, and the reason he failed, because the driving examiner said he kept looking at the gear stick. And he knows you don't look at the gear stick. That's bad, Chris, that's bad. So I say, Chris, why are you looking at the gear stick? Something you've never done that before. And he said, Josh, I was not. I was in fact trying to look at the driving examiner's iPad. Don't look at the driving examiner's iPad. It's the same as looking at a phone. You know, there's a reason it's illegal, because it takes your eyes off the road and then you end up swerving and whatever else. And you hate to hear this, but it's just so damn true. Practice makes perfect. The more hours you get on that road, the more comfortable you're going to be, which means you're going to be more confident, which means you're going to have a far higher chance of passing your driving test. So if you're going out still and you're getting nervous, and I'm just talking on a normal average day, I'm not talking for your driving test, normal average day, you're going out, you're still nervous, chances are you need to practice on whatever that thing is making you nervous. Now, we'll talk a lot about confidence and saying half of nerves are confidence. And, you know, if you go into the driving test feeling ready, you will be ready. And that's very true, but there is the exception. I do have the occasional student that it doesn't matter how ready they are, they still don't feel ready for the driving test, you know? And sometimes that's my job, our jobs as driving instructors, to lend our confidence to you and explain why, you know, try and get the message across why you are actually ready for that driving test. Another key point to the driving test is knowing our surrounding area. Now, on the driving test, you can only go, you know, a maximum of what, 15 to 20 minutes away from the test center. So trying to surround that driving test area in a 15-minute radius shouldn't be that difficult. So that's all you got to do. Try and get on as many of those roads as you can to give you a good idea of where you're going and what to expect. You're also going to feel more confident if you've been driving around the area around the same time as your driving test. If you've got an 8 a.m. driving test, there is no point in doing every single driving lesson at 11 o'clock in the morning when it's at its quietest. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a bit of a shock. It's also massively important to make sure that you're having a look at the danger zones, okay? These are the test killers, the test destroyers of time. Okay, these are giveaway signs that are sometimes a bit sneaky or in oversigned areas where it's very easy for people to miss them. Not acceptable, but it's very helpful if you've got a driving instructor who knows a local area that can help you with these fail zones. It's also really important that you know your car inside and out. Hey car, tell me about yourself. What's your favorite color? What should I call you? Maybe not that intimately, but know the buttons in your car inside and out. That way, you're not going to go wrong. You're not going to get stumped. Imagine if the windows start fogging up and you don't know how to demist the windows, or it starts to rain, you don't know how to turn the wipers on, or you just haven't got enough ability to know how much you need to press the brake or how you should be adjusting with the clutch. The third and final tip from the driving test examiner is how disappointed they are when someone can't answer the show me, tell me question correctly. It just shows a complete lack of preparation for the driving test. Now, don't get me wrong, not getting your show me tell me question right will only lead to a driving fault, also known as a minor fault. But as I say, it just doesn't look good. So best thing to do, revise up, make sure you know it. The answers are all there. If you can't find them, I'll put a link in the description for show me tell me questions. And on to the final part of the video. If you missed it before, give yourself the best possible chance of passing and have a look at my online driving course in the description below. This leads us on to the final part of the video, which is how we can impress the driving test examiner by putting ourselves in the driving examiner's shoes. Now, we're going to do this in test order. So from the beginning of arriving at the test center, trying to lead on in some sort of order till we finish the driving test. Now, the first recommendation I would make is dress to impress. And the reason behind this is, think about when you go out for a nice meal, or you're going out with friends, or you're going out anywhere really. You dress nicely. Why do you dress nicely? Well, one, it makes you feel better. You feel like you can take on the world when you look nice, which makes you feel more confident. So why wouldn't you do it for the driving test? Look good, feel good. Second reason, I don't care what anyone says, we all judge a book by its cover. Think the first time you've ever met someone that you still know, what was your opinion of them the very first time? When you see your driving test examiner, you're going to make a first impression of them, which is probably going to be completely wrong. So do yourself a favor, give the examiner a great first impression of you. And when you greet them, make sure you're smiling as well. Show them you're here for business. Hold on, mate, I'm just doing a driving test, for God's sake. I told you I was on a driving test. Make sure your mobile phone's off. You're gonna look like a right sausage if it's ringing. It's gonna make you more nervous as you're driving around. When the driving test examiner calls your name, make sure you've got your license handy in your hand so you're not having to wait around for ages. All you're doing is taking time off their coffee break, and it's gonna take you longer to get back. Get it out, get it ready. The other thing to think about is on your driving test, the examiner is going to need a second mirror to see out the back during your driving test. If you don't have one, no problemo. It would just be far better if you let the examiner know while you're still in the test center. Not ideally once you've got in the car, because now they've wasted 5 minutes of their coffee break. They're gonna have to go back in, get the mirror before jumping back in the car. Then once you're in the car, you can decide on whether or not you want the radio on. All of my students tend to have the radio on very quietly. It helps them relax. Now, a lot of the stigma around driving examiners is whether or not they're quiet, or are they gonna talk to me? And how do we react to the driving examiner being quiet or talking to us? Are they gonna think we're rude if we don't talk? And the simple answer is, talk to them if it makes you feel better, but stay quiet if you want to focus on your driving. After all, they don't need any new friends. What they really want is you to pass your driving test. And so they're going to fully understand if you just focus on the road and don't try and reply to them and don't try and make small talk. Quick story about this. My brother failed his driving test 3 times. His first 2 attempts at the driving test, he was trying to talk to the examiner. Unfortunately, we are very single track minded people and we just cannot multitask. We have to focus, can you tell? So when he was talking to the examiner, he'd end up swerving or making a mistake in the car, which led to him eventually failing his driving test. On his 3rd attempt, he realized he needed to stop trying to make friends with the examiner because the examiner doesn't want any friends. They're okay, they've got loads of friends at home. Instead of trying to talk to the examiner, he focused on his driving and he passed because he stopped making mistakes. There's a story in there somewhere for you, see if you can find it. One of the main things with the driving test to remember is that you need to make sure this person next to you is comfortable, okay? If you were sitting in that seat and someone was making you uncomfortable, would you think it was a good idea to give them their driving license to drive off on the road? Chances are it's probably not. So best way to think about this is you are a chauffeur. You are taking that person in the passenger seat round to see the sights. You are not a taxi. Taxis try and get people from A to B as quickly as possible. Chauffeurs take their time and get people from A to B as comfortably as possible. Another great way to communicate with the driving test examiner during your driving test is commentary drive. You've got to remember the driving test examiner is not psychic. They cannot see inside your brain. They can only see from your actions. So the best way to do this is to communicate what you're seeing to the examiner. It's also massively effective at keeping your focus on what's actually going on ahead, which is the important thing, and less focused on this person next to you. If you want more information about that, I have got it in the no stopping game video somewhere in my collection. Feel free to have a look at that. Another big tip is never throw in the towel. As the saying goes, the show must go on. And I'll tell you why. I've had students do all sorts that I would normally say that would definitely be a driving test fail, but it wasn't. They passed because they were very, very good drivers. It was clear they made a mistake. Point being, you never ever know what the outcome's going to be, so never give up. One of the biggest skills that takes you from the learner driver to the independent driver is your planning and anticipation. Now, this skill means basically driving as smoothly as possible. And the best way of practicing this is the no stopping game. And no, the no stopping game does not mean we start driving through red lights. The no stopping game means we brake earlier and prepare earlier so we don't have to stop at the red light because it changes it to green. If you want to have a look at that, make sure you have a look at my other video, the no stopping game. Another option to practice how smooth you're driving is get a plate, put some marbles on it, put it in the footwell of the passenger seat, try and drive without knocking a marble off the plate. And the final and my favorite way of testing how smooth you're driving, get a bowl of water, put it in the footwell, and you've got to drive without spilling the water, but make sure you check with the owner of the car first. The next big tip is if you're driving on a road with more than one lane, if you've got a choice of which lane to drive on because you're driving straight down the road, make sure you're using the left lane. Left is best, right is for overtaking. So of course, if you need to overtake, use the right lane. When you finish overtaking, back in the left. Another big one that people forget is your observations when you're pulling from the side of the road. Having a look around, all you got to do is build a picture. You're going to be pulled over at least 3 to 5 times on your driving test. If it's more than that, quick story with that, had a student, Alex, pulled over 7 times. One of those times, his last time, was the emergency stop. Luckily, on that 7th time, he did clearly check his blind spot. That's what people are looking for. That's what the examiner's looking for, making sure you check that blind spot on both sides anytime you're pulling away from the side of the road. If you aren't checking it, you're in for some big trouble. The final one is being aware of your speed. Too fast and you're breaking the law or putting people at high risk. Too slow and you're encouraging people to need to overtake, which is causing high risk again because they could potentially crash into the side of you or crash into another car. But how'd you guess the speed limit if you haven't seen the sign, you might be asking? There's a simple rule. If there are street lights, chances are it's going to be a 30-mile-per-hour road unless you can see a sign saying otherwise. If it is 40 or 50 or a 20, normally there will be repeaters on the street lights going down the road. So if you're unsure, it's 30 miles per hour, but do be aware of any 20 zones. If there are no street lights and no speed signs, then chances are it's going to be a national speed limit. National speed limit is 60 miles per hour on a normal single carriageway, 70 miles per hour on a dual carriageway. Now, if you haven't already, please check out my online course. You will find it in the description or on my website, joshsdrivinginstructor.com. That is the end of the video. I hope these tips have helped you for your driving test. And that brings us to comment time. If you have a comment, a request, or you want to double check something, please get it below and I'll get back to you about it as soon as possible. Alternatively, if you'd like to contact me directly, have a look at my Instagram and feel free to message me. Josh the Driving Instructor out. I'm going. I'm off. See you later.